Welcome to Necromedia. My name is Nyx, and today's video is a story from Reddit, narrated with permission from the author. The author's name and link to the story is down below. Sit back, relax, and welcome the darkness. I don't think I had more than 20 minutes of sleep, but as soon as I heard the window being broken, I was wide awake and looking for my phone to call the police. Unfortunately, I left it downstairs charging in the kitchen, the source of the break-in. Not having a gun, I grabbed a baseball bat and psyched myself up to go downstairs. Once I reached the bottom step, I saw the silhouette of a man sitting at my kitchen table. It was dark, so I could not see what he looked like, but the stink coming off him was enough to curl my nose hairs. It was obvious, even without the lights on, that he was homeless. I was about to throw him out, but as soon as I turned on the lights, I couldn't help but to feel bad for the stranger. He was sickly skinny, dirty, with long stringy hair that grew in patches and a matching beard. The way he sat there motionless, with tears forming in his 1,000-yard stare, it seemed to me that he had given up on life. I was about to tell him to get out, but as soon as I opened my mouth, I noticed that he had a shotgun on his lap. Upon seeing this, I dropped the bat. I nervously asked him what he wanted, but he didn't answer me. Instead, he just sat still and stared straight ahead as if I wasn't even in the room with him. Scared, I asked if he was hungry and that I could make him something. As a kid, I was instructed to give the homeless food instead of money, since they might buy booze or drugs with it. As I heated some leftovers in the microwave, I prodded the stranger with questions: what his name was, what he wanted, and if he wanted me to call anyone. He did not answer for a long time, and hardly noticed the food I placed in front of him once it was ready. However, once he started talking, he told me a story that would change my life forever. He said his name was Cole Dyer, and admitted to killing 20 people. I'm not at all embarrassed to say that I cried and begged for my life at this point. This only angered Cole, who ordered me to shut up and sit down so he could tell me something. Doing what he said, Cole said that his first victim was a hooker who he choked to death. This one wasn't killed like the others because he didn't know how he wanted to do it at the time, or for that matter knew that he had a taste for it. After killing her, Cole expected someone to come by and arrest him, but after a while, with no detectives or police coming by, Cole figured he was in the clear. Finally, having a way to vent his frustrations and no longer feeling like some cog in the machine, Cole's murderous fantasies took on a life of its own. Eventually, he started to consider himself the pass-it-on killer. The reason Cole liked that name could only be explained by his twisted sense of righteousness and questionable moral compass, which he explained to me in great detail. The gist of it was that if he killed enough pests, good things would come back to him. Symbolizing this, he would replace the head of his previous victim with the most current. Realizing killing people he knew was a sure way of getting caught, Cole learned what questions to ask complete strangers to discover the pests in their lives, because who didn't like talking about themselves? Cole explained that he was great at talking to people and could talk the devil into lighting himself on fire. Because of this gift, it was easy for Cole to learn where these people lived, worked, drove, and more. Since the murders were spread out nationwide and none of his victims had any connection to the others, authorities were at a loss. They told the public they were chasing leads, but they never even questioned Cole about his hobby. It was at this point that Cole demanded that I grab a pen and paper and jot down his tale. Who was I to say no? Even though he had his hands on the table, there was still a shotgun in his lap. I didn't want to bet that it wasn't loaded or that I was faster. The safe bet was just to write the story he was telling me and hope he would show me mercy. While scouting for the 21st victim, Cole found himself behind a small series of apartment buildings. It was here Cole started to shake, as if he was scared. I heard a small group of people huddled around someone's basement apartment, whispering to whoever was inside. They were a ways away, so I couldn't make out the details at the time, but I could see that something wasn't right about them. They were dirty, long greasy hair and beards, but there was something else about them, something evil. One by one they stopped their hushed whispering and turned their gazes toward Cole. This prompted Cole to return to his car, and on the way he dared a peek over his shoulder. When he did, they were following him, but stayed just out of the cone of light the street lamps provided. It creeped me out. I was already thinking of finding someone else to kill because I don't like killing apartment buildings. Too many neighbours, you know. When I saw them though, that sort of settled it. I wasn't going to go back there. I kept looking back in the mirror on the way home to see if I was being followed, but in the 5-hour drive I didn't see a thing behind me. The next day, however, I noticed a car driving slowly through the parking lot every few hours. I was smoking lots of weed at the time and figured I was just being paranoid, but the next night I woke up to tapping on the door. As Cole explained to me what happened next, he started to rock back and forth the way I've seen children do in an effort to calm himself down before continuing his story. Thought it was my imagination at first, but then I started hearing my name being whispered from the hallway. When I realised I wasn't imagining the noises, I looked out the peephole. Cole described at least 5 filthy and malnourished faces partially covered by long unkempt hair that did little to hide their dark sunken eyes that shined with a kind of hate and sin that even the pass-it-on killer feared. They spent the entire night begging me to come out. In the building Cole called home, it wasn't uncommon to hear drunken exes pound on doors demanding to be let in, so their begging went on for hours. Eventually, a neighbour Cole never bothered to get to know, but shared a thin wall with, decided to open the door to tell the strangers to keep it down. She stopped mid-sentence the moment she saw them, Cole explained. They pushed her back into her apartment and all piled in. They were tearing through her place for a while, and when she cried or begged or groaned, they just laughed. Eventually they made the woman call out to Cole and to beg him to come out from his apartment. Whenever she did, they would laugh and instruct her to say it louder. She would comply with their demands and her reward would be getting hit more. When Cole refused to open the door or respond, they grew bored and started getting violent with the woman. First, the sounds of punches and things getting broken, but then, Jesus, they were eating her. It was loud and wet and lasted until the sun came up. I didn't want to interrupt someone who was obviously crazy. After all, who knows how a madman thinks? The best course of action for me was to remain silent and allow Cole to go on for as long as he wanted. Cole didn't leave his room until noon. By then, he was confident they were gone and that it was safe to leave. There was no way I was gonna stay there, no fucking way. Cole barely touched the meatloaf I heated up for him because he was too distraught. Considering how he looked, I thought he was going to inhale it. After packing his car and making sure to remember the head of his previous victim, who he kept on ice, Cole went to some army surplus store to get what he needed, get away for a while. To Cole, this meant staying at a seedy hotel. About a week later, I was getting some grub at some grocery store, just walking in the parking lot and minding my own business, right? They drive up behind me and laid on the horn. I didn't even bother getting something to eat after that. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. By the time Cole remembered that he left the head of his previous victim back in the mini fridge at the hotel, he had already crossed 2 state lines. I could tell this bothered him, even before he let out a dry laugh about how he has completion anxiety. At this point of the story, Cole had to take a moment, and knowing that he had a shotgun on his lap, I gave it to him, hoping that my kindness would be repaid and I could keep my head once he finished his tale. I poured him some milk and offered him the rest of the baby carrots I had in the fridge. Cole traded his car for a van shortly after that encounter because there was no doubt that whoever was following knew what he was driving. At least I could sleep in the van, right? Save money on hotels and shit. It only took 5 weeks or so after trading in for the van that Cole crossed his pursuer's path again. This time he was in a deep sleep when he heard them say his name, causing his eyes to shoot open, immediately locking on the dark eyes of a woman with the same sinister resemblance as the men Cole had seen outside his apartment. However, without a beard, this woman's disfiguration was more noticeable. At first, I thought it was a cleft lip and chin, but it wasn't. The few teeth that she had were small and brown and grew fucking everywhere, Cole explained, as his dirty fingers fidgeted with the gun in his lap. Like the gums and the inside of the cheeks and shit. Even in the dark, Cole could see their black eyes glow with hateful light, and when he turned over the engine, the headlights revealed dozens of her family, standing 10 or so feet apart. They were naked, Cole explained, his eyes growing distant as he was reliving the painful memory. They were standing still, smiling and just looking at me, like they were giving me permission to leave. Cole told me that he swerved to hit a few with the front tire, or at least clip them with the van's fat ass. However, they all stepped to the side, effortlessly avoiding getting run down. When I got the opportunity to ask what he meant by her family, he revealed that was a recent term given to them. At the time he thought they were demons or vampires, but no longer thinks that's the case for reasons he did not share at the time. After that encounter, Cole abandoned the van and stole a car. It was confessed to me that he would steal a new vehicle whenever he felt that they were closing in on him. This feeling usually came with a sensation of a tightening of his chest or his balls and was triggered by anything from something he imagined seeing in the corner of his eye to the cries coming from a murder of crows. Zigzagging across the country, Cole made every effort to forever rid himself of these people and the hateful pulse that resonated from them. Cole would stay inside at night, and if he could, he would sleep during the day. He would pass the time by reading and listening to music. It was a surprise to me that he preferred classical, considering the way he looked. My shock must have been apparent because Cole explained that Vivaldi Concerto No. 5 was his favourite and thanked his mother for getting him into tasteful music. While on the run, Cole would take odd jobs here and there to pay for what he needed to survive. A tractor assembly line in Michigan, a toll booth operator in Florida, and a semi-way station in Nevada. Whatever job paid him in cash, and as long as he didn't have to work at night. No matter where he found work, he would not stay long before feeling that they were closing in on him and would more often than not leave before getting his paycheck. I will spare you the details of what Cole felt he had to do in order to survive up to this point. Up to now, he had been talking to me, a captive audience, due to the shotgun on his lap, for well over 4 hours. The night Cole came to my house was shortly after leaving a place he had stayed at for about 3 months, a loft above a bar in northern Canada. When asked why he would want to live above a bar while on the run, Cole shrugged and said that he thought that a bar full of people at night would keep him safe. When they finally arrived, they softly cried out his name from the back alley under his window. With all the music being played downstairs, Cole had no idea how long they had been calling, but the moment he knew it was them, the giggling began. They flattered Cole by saying they were his biggest fans and tried to prove it to him by telling him details that only the pass-it-on killer would know. Cutting off a head is hard. Even if you have power tools, it's messy shit. Took a while before I got the hang of it though, Cole confessed, oblivious to my disgust. I rigged a bike pump to a catheter, snaked it through the axillary nerve until it reached the superior vena cava. It only took about 2 minutes before the blood stopped flowing, and by then removing the head was pretty much blood-free. Cole swore to me up to this point he never spoke to them, but that night at the bar he finally had enough and accused them of being vampires, due to the fact that they needed permission to come in. As soon as I said that, everything went silent. I must have been used to the sounds they were making because I didn't notice it until it stopped. That's when someone with a strange accent told me that they were not vampires, but in fact something else. Something that Cole never finished this thought. In the silence that followed, I didn't know what he was going to do, and this terrified me. It might have been a lack of sleep on my part, possibly even momentary insanity, but I had to know who or what was chasing Cole. When I asked, he didn't answer, so I pressed my luck and asked him what else needs permission to enter a house other than vampires. Again, he didn't answer, and even though I knew it was a mistake to poke the bear, I started to ask again. As soon as the words started to leave my mouth, Cole reached into his inner breast pocket and pulled out what I thought at the time was paper napkins. After inspecting it for a moment with an expression I have never seen before, Cole slapped them down on the table between us. Written on them, in everything from pen to marker to pencil, were the messages, "Let us in," "Open the door," and more. It was hard to tell what else was said because the writing overlapped. However, it was clear to me that these messages were written by dozens of people. As I picked one up to look at it closer and possibly ascertain what was written, my finger rubbed the glossy underside. Turning it over, I saw that it was a photograph, and in it Cole was sleeping in what appeared to be a small apartment. The next appeared to be him in an abandoned bus, a dirty attic, and so on. In some of the pictures, Cole looked 20 years younger, and it made me wonder just how long he was on the run for. I know that stress can prematurely age people, but I had a hard time believing that the person in the picture and Cole were one and the same. Even though there was a part of me that knew what I was looking at, I needed to hear it from the man himself. But before I could ask, Cole said, "They don't need permission to enter someone's house," as he stared blankly into the empty space behind me. I had to look back to see if anything was there, and was more relieved than words could explain when I saw nothing behind me. We sat there quietly for what seemed like an hour before Cole said anything else. When he did, it was as if he suddenly remembered that he was telling me a story and picked up where he left off, the part where they then cut the power to the apartment and the bar under him. It didn't take long before the woman tending bar that night was shouting at them not to come closer. They just laughed. They tore her apart, and all I could do was wait until morning to come, Cole confessed with a shake of his head as if to eject the thoughts from his mind. Thing is, Canada has some long nights during the winter, and I only had enough food for a few days. Cole didn't tell me how long he stayed in that room for, and I didn't want to ask. It was obvious from the 1,000-yard stare that these events were still fresh in his mind, so I kept my mouth shut. When Cole left his room, he saw gore sprinkled everywhere, like a trail of breadcrumbs that started from behind the bar and led right to his apartment. Careful not to touch anything with his bare hands, Cole told me that he emptied the cash register and stole a toolbox from the back office, so he could switch license plates whenever he felt the need to in the future to throw his pursuers off his scent. I don't know how to stop them, but I think I have a good idea how to slow them down, Cole said. But before he could elaborate, he noticed that the sun was shining through the window and we had been talking for hours. Thankful that he went another night without seeing them and having someone he could talk to, Cole thanked me for listening. I didn't know what to say to such a story. What could I say? In the pregnant pause that followed, I filled the void by rambling about whatever came to mind. My job, the annoying co-workers, and how my boss is always looking over my shoulder, as if this was at all similar to Cole's own story. I didn't think anything of Cole asking me if I liked my job or where I worked at the time, and soon I was answering all of his questions. After a short while, Cole thanked me. At the time I assumed that it was because I took the time to listen to him. Then he took my car keys off the counter and left without another word. It might have been 10 minutes after Cole left before I called the police, and all I said to them was that my house was broken into and that my car was stolen. After all, if I said anything else, it might make me look as crazy as Cole. Maybe it was just me being tired, but I was truly afraid that the police would think I was insane if I told them the story Cole told me. The more distance I put between myself and that night, the less real it felt. But then reality set in once I learned that my boss was found dead a few days later. According to the local newspaper, the Whisper Alley Echo, pieces of my boss were found all over his bedroom. Most people in town considered this to be a rumour to stir up newspaper sales, and I wanted to agree, but it was hard to, considering Cole's tale. In the back of my head, the idea of what Cole told me being true kept teasing me. It bothered me so much that I ended up hiring a private investigator, a decision I came to regret. I would rather be ignorant of what came next. A week after hiring the PI, I received a phone call informing me that my boss's head was found in the middle of another bloody mess all the way in Cleveland. Over the next few weeks, I kept thinking of the story Cole told me. If those thoughts weren't front and centre, they were creeping in the back, ready to pounce on a happy moment to turn it sour. It didn't take long before I started seeing dark patches dart from one shadow to the next, disappearing as soon as I turned to look at it. At first I chalked this up to being a mouse, the reflection off of my glasses, or lack of sleep. After all, it was much harder to sleep in a house that had been broken into. Hoping it wasn't mice because of my hatred towards them, I bought some medicine in town so I could get some rest at night. It worked wonders when it came to getting shut-eye, but did nothing to stop me from seeing these shadows. With an embarrassing frequency, I would imagine the reflecting eyes on the side of the road were Cole's night visitors, or think of them whenever I heard the house settle. It was as though toying with the idea of them being real was enough to invite them into my life. I don't recall what came first, hearing my name being called out in public, a sound similar to a murder of crows cawing, or the soft scraping at my screen windows at night. However, once I realised that the noises and the visions were real, there was no way to block them out. At night, the soft whispers were hard to make out, and the more I tried to ignore them, the more I thought about them. I could not tell you how many nights I stayed up just so I could put my ear up to the wall, but I can tell you it was worth the effort, because unlike Cole, I know what they want. They whispered a message that took months before I understood it fully, but in those words that only someone with a certain madness could grasp, I understood. It wasn't as long as you might think before I did the one thing Cole was never brave enough to do, and opened the door. The first night I opened the door for them was terrifying, like losing one's virginity. Even with Cole's description, there was no way I could have been prepared for their appearance because they resembled humans the way sharks look like minnows. During these conversations, they instructed me to share Cole's story with the world, so some of his madness could rub off on others and season the meat. Heralding their arrival will include everything from seeing shadows in the corner of your eyes, the sounds of whispering, and something similar to the cawing of crows. Once you hear and see these things, the process of marinating will begin, and the end will soon follow. Try not to think about them. Try to shut them out. The only thing that will do is make you think of them more and invite them into your life. As soon as this happens, it will be too late. And when they arrive, you can thank me, a better and far more successful pass-it-on killer than Cole ever was. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's story. If you would like to submit a story to be read, you can email me at nyxnecromedia@gmail.com. We also have a subreddit where you can submit stories. You can find the link below. We'll be back soon with more scary stories.